Hello. Well, you are the master of cinematic conversation, so it's a pleasure to get to have a cinematic conversation with you.
I'm better in my movies than in real life. In movies, you can rehearse and write and rewrite and get it just right. Life is a little more messy.
Yes, but you do like to talk, don't you, about movies?
Yeah, sure. I have a film society. I introduce and talk about movies, and yeah, I can do it.
So I feel like your personality comes through in your films. I don't know to what extent you believe that to be true.
I think it's inevitable. Yeah, a film's going to reflect the director's personality, probably.
How would you describe that personality?
Mine?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a question you never have to ask yourself or answer too often. I don't know. In regards to this movie, probably anti-authoritarian, a little smart-ass, little comic, a little tragic, all these things on top of each other. Oh, complex. But every human personality is complex. But conversational, definitely trying to find some kind of meaning or truth behind everything. Maybe something like that. But very people-based, very character-based.
Right. Yeah, what I imagine to be your personality, obviously, I only know it through your films and brief conversations, is a fundamentally decent point of view on the world. That always comes through to me. Despite what you started out by talking about, sort of cynicism or anti-authoritarianism, but to me, there's a kind of there's a great empathy and curiosity about people.
I was reading a profile one time. It says he loves humanity but hates individual people. I think I'm the opposite. I really love individual people. But the bigger picture of humanity, you have to sort of question.
Yeah. You
have to wonder how we're doing. I wouldn't say hate because that includes all of us, but it's sort of like.
Right. With Last Flag Flying, we have not a sequel to The Last Detail, but as close as you can get to one without being one, I think. Spiritually, these characters are the same characters, right? If not defined.
There's some DNA there for sure of those three guys.
Can you talk about why not a sequel, or how it evolved from a sequel
it's
to
technical? Yeah. And when you think of film history, I think it's just technically impossible. If you don't have the same people.
Right.
Can you make this? Has there ever been a sequel in film history that doesn't have the same actors?
Right.
It doesn't have the same. I mean, you have like Manhunter become Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that the Silence of the Lambs? Is it a sequel to Manhunter?
Yeah, technically maybe not.
Yeah, it's the next book in Thomas Harris's series about Hannibal Lecter, but no one called it a sequel. It was the book. We're probably in that territory.
Yeah. But there were choices made for dramatic reasons that also make it drift from being a direct sequel to the character.
We could express more getting out of the specifics of that story from a long time ago. Daryl, the author of the book, so it's not and co-screener. So it's not like I'm, running off and doing something behind his back. We are collaborating on this together by putting in a lot more background that they had a specific Vietnam experience. They have this shared background of in wartime, which wasn't not in the original. That they're Marines, instead of Navy, things like that. That just helped us tell our story.
And when you and Daryl went through the first attempt to make the film, was there an attempt to get the original cast members on board at that time?
Well, actually did kind of start to float. I mean, it was pushing it then, if you think of the age of... Well, first, it was problematic from the beginning because Otis Young was no longer alive. Jack Nicholson was old, and not acting too much, and Randy Quaid was, Randy Quaid.
Right.
So it was always going to be, but I think there was some float out in that direction and just to see, but we never really got anything back. So all just as well that it went in this other more purposeful, specific direction, I think.
Well, there's another fantastic ensemble here. How much do the personalities of these actors meet with the personalities of their characters in the film?
Well, to some degree, for sure. I think all these guys, well, when you're talking at the level of these actors, they can kind of do anything, but the fact that they would come aboard and want to play these guys, and they're very different, as their characters are very different. Bryan Cranston as Sal is like, I know this guy. Gosh, Sal, he's that guy who's just, he'll take a bullet for you, but he'll, he's eating and drinking and just everything's compulsive, and he's that guy who will drive you crazy, but he's there for you. He's, and so he was very specific. He's like, I know this guy exactly. Or Carell, as far as Doc goes, was asking a question like, why do you think Doc's doing that? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if Doc knows. And like, yeah, I don't know if he knows. So he's kind of feeling his way through a performance where Cranston is kind of imposing a very willful thing, which is very Sal-like. And then Lawrence Fishburne's Mueller character, the preacher, who used to be a Hellraiser, along with Sal, his own transformations. I think Lawrence found that too. He's somewhere in between, a very thoughtful guy who's become different, but he's still that guy too, like we all are.
Yeah.
You can't just totally not be who you were in the past. You can certainly try to become a better person, and people can change pretty significantly, but not entirely.
Yeah. I'm really curious about the 2-week rehearsal period. Do you have a specific example of something? Most of it, I'm sure, can't be pinpointed. But
right, yeah,
but if something that made it from the rehearsal room to the final cut that sticks out in your mind.
Oh gosh, so much. I mean, my rehearsal period, it's not just actorly, it's kind of writerly. We sit around, I do pen in hand, read through scenes, and just keep working on it, and I give the actors a lot of space to just feel their way through. They had to establish those relationships, those long-term relationships of what happened back then, and I wouldn't know how to just show up on a set and start doing it. Yeah. They really needed to hang out together. And
have you ever been in a position where you felt like you needed that rehearsal and you didn't get it?
I've often been in that position where I wish I had more, or was the main cast. You often get it sometimes with day players. People are coming in for one scene. Sometimes you're challenged to get the rehearsal time. You have to kind of work it up on the day. You hear that word a lot in movies, on the day, because you're doing a lot on the day. It's happening. Yeah. So you got to be able to do it all. But for certain, the ones with the bigger relationships, I want to spend as much time as possible. So that means a lot. But I'm trying to think. Almost every scene transforms to something a little different. I would say very little. And I really do defer to the actor quite a bit. I mean, I create an environment. I try to that they can feel very trustful of the process and each other, and that I kind of got their back. I'm not going to make them look stupid. I'm going to encourage them in a certain direction, and we're going to find something together. I always have new ideas every day. As we're working on scenes, but it's a collaboration. So I want them to feel like they own it, and that's the only way it's going to work and be believable. Is if that they're confident in their choices and know why they're doing what they're doing. So I want them to own that. So the director in that regard is often like you're the coach. You're putting their name on the lineup card, sending them into the game, and maybe making a change here or there, or whispering something in their ear, but it's theirs.
So what does the title of the film mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's touchy ground when you get on flag territory these days. I was just, it's kind of like it's all over and there's just one flag, I think that's how you feel as you go through life. It's like, oh, all that's behind you and there's just, we're down to one. With like the last flag flying. But I think, I don't know specifically what.
Sure, it's evocative though.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to take their own meaning from it.
But, we're not an upside down flag. I'll make the distinction.
Yeah.
That these guys can actually fold that flag at the end of the movie in all with absolute specificity as to how to do that and what that means, and present that flag to the deceased son's father, their friend, and do that right, because they do accept and respect the traditions of that and what that means, even though they know, it's a pretty anti-war movie, but I think once a Marine, always a Marine, that they can still summon that easily, because that's something they do respect.
Yeah. Well, it's not dark yet, right?
Yeah, and that's what comes up right after the Dylan song is quite telling, I think. It's very lucky to get that song.
Yeah.
Not dark yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah. Well, of course, while the film is a war movie of a sort, and a road movie and all those kinds of things, it's fundamentally about these characters coming back together after 30 years and reckoning with, who are we now as opposed to who we were then? How do we relate now as a group as opposed to how we related then? And can we, to some extent, recapture some kind of our camaraderie or the magic of that relationship? Is that something you've experienced in your own life? I know I have in mine.
Yeah, certainly. You get older, life gives you these opportunities occasionally to have people back, and I think that's why people have class reunions, and they kind of impose this.
Right.
But it is a fascinating, ongoing, long-term relation, isn't it?
Yeah.
You with your younger self, you with your contemporaries, people you grew up together. Even, war is probably the most extreme example of bonding with someone, but if you played on a sports team together, even if you're on the debate team together, even if you just grew up, even if you just went to elementary school and junior high and high school with some people, you run into them 30 years later, you're like, oh, we went through something together. Right. And that everyone has that in their life. I mean, we all fit into each other's narratives of each other's lives, and we were supporting, you're the lead character in your drama, you can't help but be, and everyone else has supporting roles to whatever degree, and we're all, you adopt your, you take your supporting status in other people's lives seriously, and you play that part.
And it's such a, it comes up a lot in movies too, that kind of idea of like, well, maybe one last ride, in the Western, or whatever it is.
Or and crime films, one last heist. That's the one that's always going to go wrong. Rest assured. That's the one that. But there is that one for the Gipper, one kind of old time. Like I think in the cycle of how people live their lives and think that that's kind of a fun idea. But
and one of the things I love about your and Daryl's story here is that any other filmmaker, I think, would bow to the pressure to make this one of those, like, going in style or something, where it's like, oh, it's goofy, they're getting into the hijinks. But this isn't a hijinks movie. It's really...
Not really. There's enough tragic underpinnings of they're kind of escorting a body, up the eastern seaboard. But we have a little bit of that. I wanted to show like the last three guys to actually get a cell phone.
That's the version of this movie.
That's our
another movie style. They might be like getting a prostitute or something.
Oh gosh, or robbing a bank or something. But that's not who they are. But they are guys who were on the cusp. And frankly, we needed him to get a cell phone just to him to be able to communicate a little bit. The narrative. So
one of the interesting ideas in the movie is about when it's right and just to lie and when it's not.
That's a minefield. It's a very important area for people to acknowledge. Everybody thinks they're the possessor of truth, or everyone's truthful, but you realize the social lubricant of life and getting along with people, even the people, especially, the people absolute closest to you, and family and cultures, we all have to kind of lie to each other or play a part or withhold. And it's everyone has to examine that themselves, how they do. I read a thing, the average person lies, like 18 times a day. And you go, oh, what are you talking about? I'm truthful. It's like, but that little thing you said, that wasn't completely, and there's a difference between like honesty and truthful. There's a little honesty is, it's more specific, I guess, whereas truth is a larger thing that has probably a subjective element. And unfortunately, I think ideologically, truth is in that area. You know, trickle-down economics works just because I feel it does. I just feel tax cuts to rich people will stimulate the economy.
Yeah, right.
You know, I don't know why, I just know. You know, so we end up with bad policy based on people just feeling, you know, I just feel climate change couldn't be real, so those people, like, you know, so their truth becomes something, but it's in a different realm, so, but it feels like truth. So there's different levels there, but truth is a very blunt instrument, you know, but you need it, you need lies, you know, a tagline to this movie could be, the lies that bind. You know, I thought of that, it's a little too clever maybe, but it's like, but cultures need it. I mean, you need to lie to a population and the media and everybody to get your next war. You know, you kind of do on one sense. It rarely makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't had a war where we were attacked and we've had to fight back. You know, that's kind of a thing that doesn't happen anymore. We need to build a big narrative to go do our imperial wars, and that's like threats and all these other things. You know, we haven't had, you know, the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, you know, even that's in itself a deeper question of why, you know, if there's always more behind it, but it's easy to gin up the public with these really simple versions of things. But, you know, that's the way it works as a culture. We buy these myths, we buy these lies. They're necessary to, you know, we buy these myths about our own, you know, our own country, you know, our own exceptionalism, our own, and but I think you can be a patriot and love your country and still question everything. I think that's the job, right? But that's the progressive, you know, conservative divide is in that area too. But yeah, it is an examination of the notions of truth.
Yeah, on a national level and on the personal level.
Yeah.
The lies they've been telling themselves to kind of get through the day, and
and it's hard to see lies play out in public. You know, I remember being really, and this is where this kind of comes from, and here when Pat Tillman died, and you know, the war hero, that, you know, it's just so frustrating. I can just imagine, as a citizen, it's horrible, but to be a family member and to be lied to by your government in that specific way is so horrible. So, versions of that happen all the time.
In your own writing process, what are the kinds of lines you end up scribbling out or deleting?
Redundancies and things that are just too on the nose. Sometimes scripts, they read a certain way. You write for a certain purpose, just to communicate something. But when something's coming out of an actor's mouth, it's like, ooh, that's a little much. Maybe we don't need to say it like that. You know, so I'm always backing off. I think it's good to put it all on the page and then back off it and minimize it and maybe make it more vague, more how people really talk.
Yeah.
I mean, they're two different mediums, really. It's always been a challenge in the film world to me, because you have to communicate literarily, you know, on the page what you want the movie to be, but then the reality of trying to make a realistic movie is different. So I always am constantly adapting that from one to the other.
Are we possibly entering into a new era of indie cinema with things like Amazon Studios?
It's a good thing. If you remember back 7-8 years ago, it was really Deadsville. You know, there was not. I felt we had come to the end of something, and so as a filmmaker, and any filmmaker would say this, we would all run into each other, and like,
where's the money?
Yeah, like, what's going on? This is great. Producers, directors, everybody, and it was changing times. The industry one thing was ending and nothing else had started. So, but you knew something like, oh, stories have to be told. Film's not going to go away. And I like the way what it's kind of slowly morphing into. There's a lot of new companies, and I'm liking this new generation, and I don't mind at all. You know, I've been fortunate to work with the Annapurnas of the world and the Amazon Studios. It's a lot better than it was, put it like that. So I can't complain. Things can always get worse. So we've been at worse. Countries do that too. pat ourselves on the back when things are going okay. Like the 90s, we're looking back like, oh really? We're going to get upset about that? Things are okay, you know, relatively speaking. It can get a lot worse,
Yeah.
and it does.
Well, as we're nearing the close of our chat here, I want to cycle back to the idea of conversation.
Yeah.
And you know, for some people, they're shy or they have social anxiety and they're just not talkative people. For you, where along the path did you? What informed your skill with conversation and your love of conversation?
I'm not really sure, because I'm definition shy and introverted by nature. That's kind of my little phylum or whatever. But I was amazed. I always thought in the visual art I would make these kind of serious visual films that didn't have a lot of dialogue. I really didn't. I didn't think I had a gift for it. But then I thought back, like, oh, I was always a writer and I always had a gift. I always had something for dialogue, so I should have known. So when I started making movies and there was all this dialogue coming out and people were saying things and not doing things, I was like, okay, I guess that's me. You know, you do that enough times, you go, okay, well, that's what I think cinema is that. You know, I'm interested in that. I'm interested in how people communicate or what that means or the spectrum of that. So I think, and you know, I've gotten over whatever in certain realms of the way I'm able to just sit here and free associate and talk about all this. I wouldn't have been able to do that 30 years ago. So you know, maybe just you get a little more confident or you care less or something. A lot of that's just, people's lack of confidence in the world. But everybody, we have a dialogue going in our head all day long, every human being. So you got to be your own editor. Like, what will be interesting to other people? What's worth talking about?
Yeah.
What questions to ask? I'm more of a listener than a talker. That's why this is a different position for me to be the one talking and being asked questions. Because I'm usually the guy asking questions and taking in the world. But every now and then, especially when you make a movie, it's my turn to be the blah blah guy. So you got to do it. But it's not my de facto position, you know.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It's always nice to chat with you.
Yeah.
And best of luck with the film.
So good. All right. Nice talking to you.
Okay.
Blah, blah. So it's perfect.